Welcome to another collective conversation. Today I have with me Matthew Sallee. Is that right, Matthew? Sallee?
Yeah. Yep. You got it.
Excellent. All right. Awesome. Vice President of National Accounts with Motili. I also have Jason Thorson from my favorite state in the entire United States, Portland, Oregon. He is the Director of National Accounts for Daikan, Comfort Technologies North American. I hope I got that right. If not, please correct me. But Matthew, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do, and then we'll follow with Jason in telling us a little bit about what he does.
Sure, absolutely. Nice to talk to everybody here today. I'm Matthew Sallee, as Mike said, and I've been in the built space for the majority of my career, and really have helped building owners and operators with achieve their efficiency goals inside of building technology and building products. And so, inside of Motili, which is where I work now, it's a turnkey platform for and technology platform for HVAC. And really is focused in various parts of the building industry, and really has a lot of benefits of late, in terms of everybody's got supply chain challenges, and HVAC certainly no exception. So we definitely help there in a variety of ways, and we can dig in more about what that is. But really, we're purpose built for owner direct engagement on behalf of Goodman, Daikan, and Amana HVAC product. And we do a lot of work coast to coast. So nice to meet everybody. Look forward to the discussion today.
All right. Jason.
Yeah. Thank you, Mike. And thanks again for having us on. So Jason Thorson, coming up on 6 years with Daikan. As Mike mentioned, Director National Accounts, specifically leading the multifamily group. And before that, a lot like Matthew, I have extensive past in residential new construction, a stint in building science-centric consulting in the wonderful years of 2010 to 14, when RNC was not so hot at that time. And I've worn various hats at Daikan, and often with the development community, single-family detached, now multifamily, very close to building sciences, and just as Matthew described, how as an HVAC manufacturer, we can be a value-added partner to the development community.
Excellent. I appreciate that, gentlemen. So I want to give a little context as to why I was so interested in having this conversation. And this dates back to, let's say it was 3 to 4 years ago. I met Matthew at a conference, and I walked up to him, just started having a conversation, and soon discovered he fascinated me beyond belief, because he started talking about HVAC technology, and he talked about this sort of end-to-end servicing of the condensing unit, the entire system itself. Talked about this plant down in Houston that it was like the largest building in the entire United States under one roof, and how manufacturing happened there. And then there's this backbone that's built against that manufacturing that services HVAC. And it just was all very, very fascinating to me. So I want to unpack the entire thing, sort of soup to nuts if we can. I know we kind of have to keep it 10,000 feet or above, but how that entire system works. So, and then obviously in the world of regulation as it relates to Freon, I know there's probably some interesting things that our audience would want to know there. But maybe to sort of thumbnail sketch from a high level, Matthew, can you remind me how that conversation went, and we can kind of take off from there?
Yeah, absolutely, Mike. And it's a really interesting one. So Daikan, who's our parent company, acquired us in 2017, and they acquired us because we have a technology platform. And our technology platform does a couple of things, but at its core, it brings together our contractor network, our distributor base, our customers, and all of their needs in one nice, tidy package. And so really what we're able to do is leverage the extensive distribution footprint that Goodman and Daikan have, 2,000 plus points of brick and mortar distribution today, and ever growing. Daikan's acquired probably 5 distributors in the past 18 months, which is really saying something as you look at, the last 18 months being still pandemic ridden, right? So we've acquired Stevens, Robinson, Thermal, Abco, Seacom, Air Reps, and probably 1 or 2 that I'm forgetting. And so our national distribution network truly is second to none with brick and mortar distribution. And so our platform at its core can reach into distribution and see inventory in real time. Really powerful in a time like now where you've got supply chain challenges. Secondarily, that giant national distribution network is fed by, and Mike, you mentioned it, the largest HVAC manufacturing plant in the United States, and the I think it's the now second largest factory of any product in the United States, with I think only Boeing and Tesla. And I think Boeing doesn't count anymore because they've got a big outdoor warehouse. So I think we're only second to the Gigafactory now with the square footage we have. It's several million square feet. It's, for those real estate professionals here, 95 acres under one single roof.
Yes.
Think about that. That it is a phenomenal place. It is unbelievable and is really industry leading and worldwide leading manufacturer capability and technology. Jason and I have both hosted customers there. It's a phenomenal facility. And that feeds that giant distribution network that I talked about. So once you get to that distribution network, you then have a network of contractors and service technicians that are out and about today working on various projects. And then that's where Motili really kind of brings all that together, is we work with owners and operators and managers and facility folks. And we can bring in a contractor. We can do projects large and small. We can do diagnostics. We can do large system changeouts. And we're now, as you'll hear from Jason here in a moment, moving into the new construction and development side of things. So, what we're really designed to do is streamline the traditional and historical purchase process of HVAC and bring new values to our building owners through that technology and transformation effect. So that's probably as much as I could summarize at high level. But Jason, you feel like I missed anything there? Anything you want to add?
No, that was great. I mean, to Matt's point, since 2008, north of $8 billion in investments on North American soil. Matt just cited a lot of the acquisition side, and you guys are talking about the facility. It's the Daikan, Texas Technology Park, the DTTP. That's north of $450 million. And it's extremely impressive, to Matt's point, from size, obviously. I mean, it's the biggest building I've ever seen in my life. No doubt about that. You pull up on it just outside Houston, Texas, and it's a sight to behold. But really, the manufacturing capabilities and all that goes without said, but really as a hub, as a technology and innovation center. And to Matt's point, we've taken customers through there, and those customers have done business with all sorts of other brands. And a lot of the first words are, they feel like they're entering a giant, Apple store, or I mean, it's so state of the art. And what I say to our customer base or those I'm interfacing, don't just look at it as a big, high end sophisticated building, but it really represents Daikan Comfort Technologies North America, their commitment to, on North American soil, bringing together, Matt's mentioned, our acquisition of Goodman and Amana. It really is where we are designing, engineering, and optimizing products very specific to the North American market. Not to get too HVAC nerdy or specific, but in the North America, we like our ductwork. We like certain solutions that are not maximum efficiency or innovation. And you look abroad, Europe, Asia, strained electrical grid, building design, that you cannot have ductwork, right? Really leading edge stuff due to density, age of market, populations, et cetera, et cetera. The DTTP really represents that, bringing these worlds together and truly bringing to market not just where North America is today, but where HVAC is going for North American developers, mechanical contractors, designers, consumers, et cetera, et cetera.
I have to imagine Matthew has invited me down a couple of times to look at that facility, and I have to imagine that I've flown over it when I've gone to Houston. If I just look down, I'd probably see it, but my imagination tells me that that facility and the people that are working in that facility are obviously forecasting out into the future as it relates to every type of regulation you can imagine, certainly sustainability, certainly power grid management, certainly et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What are the things here in the near term, as you're looking at new developments, that I imagine that you're also able and capable of doing retrofits in current stock and things of that nature. What is it that current ownership, current operators should be looking out for as it relates to the HVAC world?
Great question, Jason. You want to kick us off
Yeah,
there? You
yeah,
want to take the start?
absolutely. So we're really, multifamily centric, the development community. And my brain really jumps to certain factors in the market. I mean, we're coming off of a public health crisis, right? So COVID, the air we breathe, right? What's in that air? As Mike kicked off with his favorite state in the United States, I'm in the Pacific Northwest in Oregon, and we've dealt with forest fires. Or Matthew sitting in Colorado, forest fires or others. So IAQ, I guess even to back up, consumers are asking different questions of their new home builders or if they're renting from somebody. I mean, really the air we breathe and the dwellings we inhabit, right? We've all heard of, VOCs, and what are those? So as information around quality of air, maybe generating less carbon emissions or carbon emissions avoidance, more sustainability, increased energy efficiency gets, if I'm an occupant, now my energy bill goes down, or cleaner energy sources. So I would just say the questions on behalf of the consumer are different, and we like that because Daikan and Goodman and Amanda, Daikan Comfort Technologies North America, our position in the market is leaning into that more energy efficient, sustainable space. So, Mike, to your question about owners and operators and that side of the equation, we want more transparency, and we want consumers to ask and demand more of their HVAC. We think that's not only where it should go, but clearly it is where it is going. And so that's our focal point in the market, to offer products that fit those evolving and really, I hate the unprecedented. We've all overused that word over the last couple of years, but really,
Sure.
really a new set of needs that the air we breathe and the energy we consume for HVAC is more top of mind than ever.
Yeah, and I think to just kind of dovetail into that, Mike, that the invisible thing that's around all of us, right? That Jason talks about is very real. We've introduced an air purifier, and there's one actually in this room with me. Number one, you can't hear it, I doubt, on here because I can't hear it. It's running right now. It's taking out the VOCs. It's taking out particulate matter. When we did have forest fires here, it kept the house clean. We don't have food smells in the house anymore. So there's this like value with air component that I think is really kind of one of these industry leading trends and something that we're seeing in the market. And it really is, as Jason said, consumer focused, right? We're getting asked for that, and I think COVID was a big driver of that. As it relates to the built space and some of the regulations that we're seeing, the DOE is pushing new efficiency regulations, just like auto efficiency regulations that occur with miles per gallon going up and up. And we're going to see a shift from the DOE here this year from what's called the SEER 2 rating to the SEER to the SEER 2 rating of HVAC products, and that's going to bring about essentially a 1 point change in baseline efficiency across the United States in the SEER and energy efficiency of the units. The thing that is going to be impactful, I think, for owners and operators to know about this 2023 transition is that most standard HVAC outdoor equipment sizes, I know that's terribly specific, will be changing, and they will be getting bigger. HVAC efficiency is really a game of thermodynamics, and it really is power in and cold air out. And the only way to truly make that at its most simple state, the only way to make that more efficient is to create bigger equipment, because you just need more surface area. You need more airflow. It's the way physics works. And so we're going to see cabinet sizes in all manufacturers go up in traditional HVAC heat pumps and outdoor air conditioning condensing units. Obviously, that's going to have an effect on cost. It's going to have an effect on the input raw materials of aluminum, steel, and copper, which all go into making these things, right?
Sure.
And we're projecting and thinking there's probably going to be somewhere between a 20 to 30% impact of just the raw materials there. And then when you look at this bigger box, you're then talking about, oh, geez, we got to put this on a truck and we got to put it in a warehouse, and it takes up more square footage. And so now you can store less, products per square foot and ship less product per square foot. And so we're really seeing an industry change that's probably second to the R22 shift. But there is a major change coming in 2023 with the DOE regulation. Of course, the industry can't stop there, right? So Energy Star is also re-releasing their HVAC 6.0 to 6.1 standard, which will change some of the labeling requirements and will improve some of the labeling requirements on the units. Not as big of a shift as the DOE one, but there will be some small adjustments to the Energy Star program at the same time. And then, UL has to get their foot in the door too. So they're upgrading UL 993, the safety standard, and they're releasing a new version of that. And so what that's going to do is create some new top plate requirements and safety requirements that are just a little more stringent for little fingers, and some other component changes and things that are good changes, but they all have an additive effect of more complex manufacturing, and they'll add to some of the supply chain challenges that we're seeing. And so that's all going to start happening now. We're starting to see that transition because a lot of the equipment won't be able to be sold through, meaning we have, as a manufacturer, we have to stop production and switch to the new equipment because it won't be allowed to be installed after Jan 1, 2023 in the majority of the United States. And so you asked the question about what are you doing at the factory right now? That's a big thing that we're doing at the factory. For the facilities management, listeners, it's gonna stress and strain the operations because every manufacturer's cabinet sizes on the outdoor unit are going to go up. And where you're in a multifamily building and you got big banks of units and they're all really close together, you're going to have to work through that as you do. And we're aware of that as a manufacturer. And so one of the things that, we've been really focused on, and Jason talked about it, is what technologies can we bring from abroad to help address some of these here and now challenges. And one of those is based on our ductless systems that we see a lot in Asia, and they're called side discharge units. And they're much more compact and they're higher efficient. Yeah, they're a little more expensive, but when you look at the impact of raw materials changes in these bigger units, actually going to a higher efficiency unit, it's almost, and some potential rebate dollars and other things that are available, you can actually move into some higher efficiency equipment more efficiently and effectively in this transition. And Jason, I don't know if you want to talk about some of that technology, but it's pretty impressive what's coming out of the Daikan side of things these days.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely want to hear about that.
Absolutely. And to the codes and standards piece, and as I say, codes and standards, I mean, let's not forget regional energy efficiency programs and utility groups, right? So you got the whole rule with carrots or sticks, right? And so you could change a code such as Washington State Energy Code, very aggressive, leading edge, tell the development community to figure it out. We're okay with that because, part of the beauty of working for Daikan Comfort Technologies and where our focus is to some of our competitors' premium offerings are a little bit more of our middle of the road standard offering. And so to what Matthew's describing and some of this experience abroad and Daikan, for those, many people say, oh, I've heard of it, not familiar. I mean, we're coming up on a 98-year-old company, right? Globally speaking, market share position #1. So we're very experienced, pushing about 50 million inverter-driven compressors. And I want to get inverter out there. Matt's teased it with side discharge compressor. On our side, we're looking to change the market, and that means inverterize. I always do the analogy of when digital was a new thing for a camera, right? I'd go into Best Buy and do you want the digital or none? And then overnight, there was no non-digital camera, right? Now it's on our phones, so maybe not a good analogy. But the point is we see an inverter standard in North America. Right now, it's about 8 to 9% adoption rate, I guess you could say. But abroad, Japan, Asia, and otherwise, they're north of 90. The point is, once you push it to standard, like LED lights, once it becomes standard, there's no going back. And with codes and standards, never mind places in the Northeast or California or the Northwest, or now you have local municipalities that, oh, by the way, we also have a noise ordinance code. By the way, we have our own carbon emission avoidance and reduction goals. So you get all these overlays, let alone a federal standard. So to Matt's point, the SEER rating went up a point or two. Well, to the product, I'd call it our flagship product, Daikan Fit. Well, that's already 2 and 3 points above this evolving standard. So for us, well positioned, we want the market to go there anyways. We like when market forces, code standards, incentives, whatever, push the action toward us, you could say, because that's where our heads are at anyways. The beauty of it is, and as I say this, I temper it because we're coming off of 2 years of global supply chain issues and cost increases, et cetera, but take that aside, as inverter and side discharge and these technologies that are core competencies for Daikin, and it's kind of old hat, we're getting those costs down just like a digital camera or other kind of what was emerging technology to now middle of the road. We're already there. So the learning curve is so much shorter, and really getting the products to market, to Matt's point, more cost effectively and efficiently. We've already been focused on it. So our attitude's kind of like, bring it. That's where we want the market to go anyways. And that's the future we see for North America, aside from regulatory forces. Whether people say, good, it's about time, or they're 5 years behind schedule, whatever, we'll take what we can get. Let's get to this new, more innovative and efficient HVAC future.
Yeah. One final thought there, Mike, I just want to sneak in. So I was on a job site about a week and a half ago in New York, and there's a cold climate heat pump program that the DOE and the local utility are running. And we've installed this inverter-based Daikin Fit equipment that's much smaller and more compact into a townhouse, multifamily type of development. And we went to see the proof of concept. And what Jason's saying is right. The price per unit was near parity to the traditional system, with the additive effect of energy savings and the utility rebate. I think we did the math. It was like 8% difference, not that much. And then when we look at the installation, though, it freed up the little backyard, because each of these vertical townhouses had a little postage stamp of a backyard. And instead of having this big 36 by 36 block in it that's really noisy, it has a little matchbox looking thing that's stuck to the wall. And it was running as we were giving the demonstration for the property owner. And at about halfway through, I stopped dead cold and I said, by the way, guys, that's on. And everybody went, what? And we were standing right at it. And they went, what? And they looked down and they're like, that is blowing air. I said, it's on. You can't hear it. It's completely quiet. And so Jason's right. We're leading the technology there. And so we're prepared to help owners and operators make that transition. And I'll say this, it's a zero efficiency in HVAC right now is a zero trade-off game. It's where LED was in 2012, 2011. You're not making any negative trade-offs to go higher efficiency inverter heat pump these days. You're not. You're getting a better system. It's quiet, more energy savings, and it's cost competitive. It's awesome.
Oh, and awesome. I have to jump in and take it one step further, because Matt's hitting it on the head. And when I present to groups, just like last week at a technology-driven, residential new construction development community setting, and what Matt just illustrated there is beautiful, because that's what we do. And when I, use an analogy, because consumers, they don't know. They're good. Well, let me take it back.
That's right.
Some do, but if you're buying a new home, you're going to accept what you get, right? And Mike, right. I know you're sitting in Atlanta, and whatever your system is, but as a quality of life enhancer, to Matt's point, to sit on your patio and have a beverage with a friend, and you have noisy, inefficient, large, all these things. But as soon as somebody realizes, right, you don't know what you don't know, to have small, whisper, quiet, efficient, lower utility bills, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, I can't help but to think it's like, when are we going? Once you show people, say something like a smartphone, once this is available to you, who walks back in the Verizon store and says, "Hey, where's the brick cell phones? Where'd they go? I want that one."
That
once they know.
For the record, I do miss my BlackBerry. I'm just saying.
All right. Well, I sometimes challenge people. It's like I would love consumers to know that there is a smaller, quieter, more efficient option. Like, challenge your home builder with that. Right? Like push that action on them, because sometimes, sadly, it almost takes that voice of customer, that squeaky wheel to get something different. The progressive and the smart developers get ahead of it, and they it adds to their brand and this is important to us, et cetera, et cetera. But it's just, for Matt and myself, it's so glaringly obvious. Like, the genie's out of the bottle. We're going there. We're thrilled to be with Daikan, and, Goodman and Mannix. That's where our focus is. And the change is really happening now. So if you can't tell between the two of us, we're immensely excited because we're living it daily. And as these wins pile up, Matt walking a project in New York and where I've been the last couple of weeks, and some of it in Denver. I mean, it's so exciting to see this corner of HVAC innovation and kind of revolution starting to take place. And as far as the codes and standards are concerned, I mean, bring them, push it, push them, push us. We want to stay out on the leading edge, and we're up for the challenge.
So I guess I have a two-part question, and the two parts have nothing to do with one another, but I'm thinking about a high-rise building that I have in Midtown Atlanta that we manage that has a giant system on the roof. So I'm trying to imagine the giant version, minier version of that, not necessarily residential use, but even though it's residential on top of a building. But then also, kind of, once you're done with that question, segueing to Matt, another piece of the conversation that we had in Arizona that was super interesting to me was it was all, what the story I told myself was that you had curated this entire labor force of HVAC technicians that I then sort of tied in, and I don't know if this was your remark or my head sort of making up stories, but things that are being manufactured today are coming off the line with IoT technology baked into the system, such that when that system pulls more amperage or has some sort of sickness, it just self-diagnoses. It then sends a message out to the labor force, and then the labor force is stack ranked, and the first guy that is on the list gets to come and take care of the problem. I don't know if that's a story I told myself or you told me, but it's in my head.
No, that's a real thing. And that's, Jason said the genie's coming out of the bottle and it's already out. And that's exactly it. So, you talk about the big high rise, right? And that
Yes.
big high rise has got a number of large systems in it, and is well communicating. Most probably the systems are talking to each other. There's a facility guy somewhere who can, it's got it all on a bunch of screens, and there's a building engineer, and they can monitor every pump, valve, switch, thing, whatever, right? All the different pieces of that giant building. And what we're doing is that trickle down effect. So the system I told you we installed in New York, it has all that same capability inside of a residential system. We can see the air quality, we can see the temperature, we can see the system diagnostics, we can see the airflows, we can see relative temperatures, we can see humidity, and 10 or 12 other things. We installed it as a proof of concept in this multifamily environment. And this was about 18 months ago. And it was really cool because we had someone monitoring the system in one of our service centers at Motili. And we got an alert that said, hey, it was in a cold weather, and the furnace was kicking on and off. And we saw the delta T getting out of whack. The delta T is the temperature between the supply and the return. And we said, wait a second, there's something wrong. So we looked at the data, and we sent one of our contractors out. We generated a work order, and we sent the contractor out, and they notified the resident. Of course, you go through all that, right? And the resident said, well, there's not a problem with my system. And we said, well, you don't notice a problem with your system, but we'd like to check it. And we found a dirty air filter. We replaced the filter. Delta T returned to normal. System went back into operating condition. So the beauty is we avoided a resident work order. And we hear so much from our clients that heating and cooling calls are that like Google review ding, right? You hate to get a heating and cooling call. And so anywhere we can get in front of that with technology and service and support, it's the betterment of the experience of that system when it's installed. And so you didn't dream that up, Mike. That is, I think, the power of where it's all going and what we're endeavoring to do. And I can tell you that we are in many cases, we are doing it, and it is working. And it's really exciting to start to see some of these early successes. Jason, anything you want to add there?
Yeah. And if you're saying, a conversation 3 years ago in Arizona, I mean, how far it's come, right? To Matt's example at the residential level, I mean, not to give him a plug, I sometimes parallel it's a better version of an OnStar, right? For your home. And we just talked about leading edge, innovative, energy efficient equipment. Well, why make the homeowner, to Matt's point, they're not a mechanical contractor. Why make them have to guess or troubleshoot? God forbid they're out of town, or it could be a short-term rental situation when you can allow the technology. Not only catastrophic failure, that's obvious. I have no heat blowing, it's in the winter. Okay, Mr. and Mrs. Jones can discover that, but predictive diagnostics and many of the same systems we see with the computers we're on now, right? Do you need to run an update? Is something out of version? And IoT, Internet of Things, over-the-air software updates, let alone, again, back to one of our flagship systems, Google Home compatible, Alexa compatible, total home automation, smart home. The landscape's evolving so rapidly, and all, just generally speaking, depending on your climate conditions and heating and cooling loads, et cetera, HVAC is often about 50% of a home's energy consumption, right? So that's a significant system. And so we should expect it to, at the point of installation, it can technologically commission itself. And then while operating, what peace of mind to the occupants, whether owners or renters, that the system is doing what it should to communicate back to the mechanical, to the experts, make sure they're comfortable, make sure their system's optimized. To Matt's point, it could be operating, but at only 70%. Well, now I'm just paying the power company more than I need to because it's not operating at maximum efficiency. And so it's an extreme focal point for us. And I'm glad you brought that up, Mike, because that in the last, let's say, 1 to 2 years, what an exciting piece. Because as we know, a lot of the relationship and the experience between the occupant and the HVAC system comes at the controls, whether I control it through my smartphone, tablet, whatever, but getting to the system, make sure it's doing what it's supposed to, keeping me comfortable, my bills low, and protecting this investment for years to come, and make sure it's functioning correctly.
It
Yeah,
just
we
from
have
an
kind of a
operator.
joke. I'm just going to put one little
Yeah,
thought
go
on
right.
there. We have kind of a joke internally that the smart thermostat really isn't that smart anymore. It's really funny to see how much it's changed.
Yeah,
I it's yeah, I totally agree with that remark. It I was thinking from a consumer's perspective, if obviously through notifications, but if you show up and you fix a problem that I don't know that I have, and it saves me money and it saves me a headache that could be a headache, down the road. I just that to me from a consumer's perspective is just awesome and fascinating and wonderful, right? And it makes the experience of living in a multifamily building even stickier, even though in some respects it's sort of this mundane thing that no one ever thinks about until it's broken, right? It makes that mundane thing a thing of wow now that's
Yeah.
really cool to me.
Yeah, and I think it's really, I talked about you're hitting the nail on the head there, Mike. It really is that behind the wall, invisible experience.
Yeah.
Systems of old had one speed; they're either on, if bullet blowing full blast, or they're off. So the experience with heating and cooling traditionally is I get this blast of hot air. And it's snowing in Denver right now, and then my system turns off, right? Or I get this blast of cold air, and then my system turns off. And the systems we're talking about don't do that. They're low and slow. They're cruising down the freeway, and they're only bringing up the system just as much as is needed to keep it comfortable. And so when you look at the data coming off of the old system and the old system's really spiky, right? You get this on, off, and that's the temperature, just swings. And you look at the new one and it just goes like this. It's just doesn't move. It's dead flat. And so you talk about the, resident experience in a multifamily building. Comfort, which is why we even put comfort in the name, is so critical because it really does create that effect of just a premium experience. I mean, we've got one of these systems in our house, and it's low and slow all the time, and it's awesome.
Do you think that this sort of dumbing down of the thermostat runs it through to extinction because your thermostat is now your phone, so you no longer have that dial on the wall? You now have this remote control governor instead of that? Is that
It's it's a great question, Jason. You want to take that
Yeah,
one?
well, my brain jumps to it. Actually, just creates battles within the household because unfortunately,
that already
now,
happens?
yeah, as if I need 4 TV remotes, right? Like, uh, yeah, no, it's a fair point. I mean, and to Matt's illustration, it's spot on. It's and he's living with it. And what you hear, at this conference, I had a developer I was in front of, and they're in their first couple years. He's like, I've heard this feedback a lot, and it's really hard for people to pinpoint. Is we are used to, just like Matt said, right? He's in a snow event apparently in Denver, so heating. In these old systems, it's like, all right, if your number's 70 degrees and you're on the couch, and okay, so it's cold out, so an older system would wait till it gets down to about 67, maybe 66. It would inundate you with a blast of 100% capacity hot air. We'd all hear the fan kick on. We'd all feel it come out of the registers, whether they're on the ceiling or floor. And then it would overheat you to about 73, 74, and then it turn off. And so it's up, down, hot, cold, da, da, da. And back to the developer example from last week, and the comments I get, and Matt's living it at his house, occupants say, they're like, it's so weird. I'm not even aware. I just put it at 70. I don't feel the cold. I don't feel the heat. It's like the air's just kind of there. It's just where it's supposed to be. And that is that low and slow, always mixing the air, dragging it in through the return, through the filter, over the coil, removing humidity, whatever the environmental inputs are, humidity or not, dryness, et cetera, et cetera. But it just has it balanced out and just spot on. And to the example of the stat, I hear what you're saying. I have a Daikin system right over my shoulder. You can't quite see it in a mirror. It's on my phone. Maybe I'm old school, but with the low and slow and with the inverter, I actually do use the handheld, but it's a set it and forget it mindset, right? It's a departure from our
Yeah.
old system, right? People would, pandemic, we all stayed home and work, but you're leaving for work or you go away for the weekend. Oh, I better turn it down to 64. And when I walk in the door, I'll crank it up before the wife and kids back to 70. With inverter technology, it's set it, forget it. That's how you're going to harness maximum efficiency. Now you're not compromising comfort. To Matthew's point, we start with comfort and work back from there, right? We could have the most energy efficient product on the planet, but if you're not comfortable, I mean,
Who cares?
in my days
Yeah.
before Daikin and consulting, we're always talking efficiency and trade-offs and this and that, but we had a mantra. It's like the water better be hot and the beer better be colder. None of it matters, right? You start with the basic human necessities and then efficient comes into play, right? You can't do it the other way
And
around.
Wi-Fi. We need Wi-Fi.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay.
But no, I mean, the controls conversation's interesting because it was just kind of a thing on the wall. Everybody ignored it. Nest evolved things because it had this, hip factor, even though
That's right.
it does what it does. We have, I can't, show a visual of it, the Daikin 1 Plus, smart thermostat, optimized for inverter, because obviously, if you can't tell, we're pretty focused on inverter. Elegant, right? It looks a lot like an iPhone. So, the thermostat game to me is a moving target, but you hit it on the head through sensor technology, and we're all married to our phones and tablets anyways. And then you look at all of total home automation and how HVAC fits into that. It's interesting to see where it's going to go. It's a bit of the wild, wild west. We're staying on the leading edge to make sure the HVAC side's represented and performs well, but how consumers and humans actually interface that wall stat, it's going to be interesting to see the evolutions and iterations, coming up in these years.
Yeah, prior to my time at Daikin, I was in an IoT business, and it was IoT and it was an IoT stack that was connected through the lighting network. So we would replace LED lights and put in a gateway and network through the lighting system, and then it could carry building sensors, and thermostats was part of it. And we had one deployment in a university setting where we removed the thermostats from the dorm room. There wasn't temperature control, and there wasn't temperature control because it was centrally controlled, and it was low and slow, kind of that big high-rise building, Mike. It was a large glycol system that was serving several hundred dorm rooms at once, and it was actually more efficient, more effective, and more comfortable to eliminate the stat entirely. And once the students, so what then had to happen was an education campaign, right? We had to educate how this works and why it works, and And there was always the space heater or two that snuck in because it was a building in the Northeast. But by and large, when the students realized it was an efficiency thing and that it actually was comfortable, their rooms weren't too hot, they weren't too cold, they didn't have to open windows, that it was actually balanced and appropriate. It got a lot of buy-in, and so there is. And we entertain questions all the time on this. I shouldn't say all the time. We entertain questions relatively frequently around set point limits and setting a tighter band of comfort so that you get that efficiency, but you're still in a comfortable range.
Yeah.
And we have probably 1 in 5 people who want to do temperature limits ask that philosophical question that you just asked: do I even need a thermostat? Right? And it's an interesting one, and I think it's going to be use case dependent, but it definitely, you're definitely hitting on something that is talked about.
Yeah, I think part of my question is born out of, I'm sure this is something that I read, germane to ambient temperature, right? And so sensors don't just stop at the condensing unit or the heater component, right? It's, my imagination tells me there's sensors at the return, there are sensors in the vents, there are sensors everywhere. When we're building new construction, we're going to build sensors into everything, right? And that sensor technology is going to be sensitive enough to understand where even our own level of comfort is without the therm, right? So I'm putting off whatever kind of heat energy as a person, as a human. If I'm working out in my living room and I'm starting to get hot, right? There's some sensor in my room that's going to collect a piece of data that's going to go into these other sensors that are collecting data at the same time. And there's, the math is just going to say, hey, we need a little more air here because Mike's working out right now. Is that sort of what we're talking about here? Is that at some point it gets that sophisticated, you could just do away? Because to me, a thermostat, I mean, you described with yours, it's like, it's fancy, it's nice, but you touch it like 12 times a year, maybe.
Yeah. So I'll tell you the example of that I have here, Mike. So I have we're launching this new Daikan purifier box. It looks like a little mini fridge, and it does a variety of things. And it notices immediately when we cook, when we sleep, when we vacuum, when we clean, when we open the door, when we burn incense, whatever. When there's smoke outside, it notices and it ramps up and down, and little lights come on, and it says, "Oh, I'm going into humidifier mode because your furnace is on, and because it's you got the heat on, and we're in Colorado, so it's really dry. Oh, you just vacuumed in here and got all this dust up in the air, and it goes into turbo mode because it senses the particulate matter." Or we cook dinner and I'll sear steaks, and it'll you get those VOCs, and it'll say, "Oh, I'm smelling stuff. I'm gonna run the carbon filter and get this get the smell out of the air." And so we definitely see that detection effect in the equipment, predominantly around air quality rather than the heat load of ourselves as humans. But that's the example I would give you there. Jason, anything you want to add on there?
Yeah, I mean, in plain terms, the singular or even floor by floor wall mount stat, it feels more like a formality. Actually, it's probably more affirmation, right? I feel this way. Oh, that's weird. 70. I must be running hot, right? Oh, I had one extra cup of coffee. I'm a little warm right now. But to your point, Mike, that's a lot of where things are going, and you hit it on the head. Whether it's sensors at the return and supply, sensors by room and occupant behavior and different needs. You said working out in your living room where you have people over. I mean, really where things are going, instead of a singular thermostat that may or may not be close to the kitchen with heat creating appliances and other inputs, or that type of thing, as opposed to more space by space, whether it be room by room or however you cut up the zoning, of just looking at your smart device and understanding the baby's room is this, the bonus room where 5 8-year-old kids are playing and sweating, is this, and then all the adults are downstairs and it's cooler and it's, east facing or whatever it is. You can feel the evolution, right? It's just houses have different needs, homes, I should say, have different needs based on their orientations or multi-dwelling units, occupant behavior, all these things feeding in. And then you introduce a different axes of humidity and other, comfort impacting principles, not just hot and cold. You certainly feel the systems are already there, their ability to up down as far as fan speed, but also cool, heat, and adjust accordingly by zone is there. And the control side, I think the technology, we know it's out there to bypass that wall mounted stat, but like everything with adoption curves and consumer preferences, are they ready to be done with it? We've had projects. I have a project, you said Welch's, Oregon, Central Oregon. We had a requirement, high technology, married couple over in Bend, Oregon. They had a firm requirement that there was not to be one controller on the wall. They did not want to see one piece of mechanical equipment in the home because it was that contemporary. So we worked around it, so on and so forth. But then you experience the other side of it. That was a very a beautiful Daikan. It's called VRV, right? It's inverter and then some. It's the leading edge of efficiency and comfort and performance. And we learned, you really got to see firsthand, like, this is the home of the future. We just skip past everything. They have a tablet on a magnet on the wall, and they had like 9 or 10. It was just completely dialed with zones and however they needed it, exactly how they were living in the home.
And the way to think about it, Mike, I'll bring this home with the final word. This question anyway is something that Jason said earlier, right? Is HVAC is a system of all its components: the controls, the indoor units, the outdoor units, the duct system. And the oldest piece of HVAC technology, I don't know for sure, but I think is probably that duct system. And that is where a lot of the Achilles heel is in efficiency in the United States, and in that control and zone capability that you're describing. I'm working out in my living room. I want it to be colder in this area because I know that I'm hot. And I want this room to be a much different temperature. The VRV system that Jason's describing is multi-zone, multi-configuration, multi-headed, and enables all of that customization and configuration on the inside of the home with very little complexity outside the home. Meaning, if you've got 7 to 10 zones inside of your house on one of these VRV systems, you don't have 7 or 10 units outside. You've got one, and and so that then gives you that ultimate precision control, room by room or zone by zone. But to Jason's point, that is the highest end. That is, and what we're seeing in mid-rise infill multifamily is these VRV systems going in and banks of resident units being put on, a single outdoor unit. And so the technology is definitely there. It's definitely going there. And it's the way it can get there is the inverter. And the inverter is something that lives in the outdoor unit. And the way to think about an inverter is that it's a variable speed compressor that has infinite adjustment from 0 to 100. And so it allows the outdoor unit to run if 2 heads are calling or 3 heads are calling or 4 heads are calling, and some of them are only calling 30% and others are calling 50%. It does all of that math and provides the exact right refrigerant to those indoor heads to get that exact right cooling at each one of them individually. It's an amazingly sophisticated system, but it's dead simple when it's installed. From the resident perspective, they're like, I need 2 more degrees of cooling. They get it.
Yeah. And thank you for
that's the level of sophistication that's just beautiful. Sorry, Jason.
No, I realize as you're saying that, I'm like, oh my God, I said all this inverter and I didn't give a very basic definition of an inverter. And Matthew you did a great job. And even circling back to the wall mount control, to Matt's point, we actually see, with Daikan, we had an air intelligence campaign a few years ago. And really the mindset was, let's get away from the 70, 72 and like the numbers. And it's like, just think of your happy place as far as thermal comfort goes. And like, so it's almost just like, it was more parallel thinking to what is your ideal comfort, like a setting on a beach practicing yoga or whatever it may be. And that's really where you're pushing it to, is just accomplishing comfort without, complication per se. Let the system do what it's good at. And we're just trying to achieve the goal for the occupant of being comfortable, clean, quiet. Just let your system, you can enjoy your AC without having to hear it, right? Have clean air without having to think about it. And then at the end of the day, just be comfortable. Let the air just do and be what it's supposed to be without you having to overthink or outsmart it. Here comes the cold. Here comes the hot. What should I do? It's like, no. My system's it's way ahead of the game. It knows what's going on outside. It's going to maximize my comfort, optimize the situation so I can just, back to the quality of life enhancer, do what I want to do, focus on other things other than what my HVAC is doing.
That's so amazing. I'm mind blown right now. And I love it. Okay. So we're coming up on an hour here. I want to fit in. So I've never seen one of these systems. So in my head, what I've heard you say is that you've got a system now that's this inverter system, smaller, more efficient. It's still mechanical. At least in my head, it's still mechanical. So mechanics have a useful life, but my imagination tells me that the technology has advanced so much so now that the life of a system, like let's say in a traditional multifamily community, you've got a system that is never taken care of, and somehow you get 20 years worth of useful life out of it, even though you don't take care of it.
Yeah.
This technology seems to me like it's going to take a lot less maintenance and last a whole lot longer than a traditional system. Is that fair to say?
I think I got a couple thoughts on this, and Jason, I'll pass it over to you, but I'll keep it high level. So, point one is the most important day in an HVAC system's life is the day it's installed. If that system is installed properly by a qualified technician for that piece of equipment, it's going to stand the test of time with an asterisk. The challenge that I think the industry is facing now with new technologies is that we're now asking our HVAC installers to learn more skills. So they have to do brazing and electrical and mechanical and finish work. And now they also are going to have to do Bluetooth configuration and, connect it to the internet and be an IT guy and run digital cables instead of analog ones. And there's a whole bunch of other things, right? And so we're piling more skill sets on the HVAC trade as this happens. And so Daikan's deploying new training programs and qualification and certification programs to ensure that the day that system gets installed, it gets installed right, and it does what it's supposed to do on day one. Every HVAC system pulls air through coils of sorts, with very few exceptions. And those coils need to be filtered, and those filters need to be changed, and the coils need to be cleaned. And you're always going to have some element of wear parts because you've got humidity reduction or humidity addition or other elements of the system that just need to be managed. And so routine preventative maintenance, as you mentioned, Mike, is still required and is still additive to the longevity of the systems. But the preventative maintenance routines are going to get better because of that communicating system effect. There will be more ability to see what actually might be failing. And so we think that the system's smartness can actually make better technicians. So that's, I think, how I would kind of summarize it. Jason, what do you think?
Oh, it was spot on. Yeah, these systems are more advanced. And I've said a few times, Daikan's position in the market, and to add to that, the quality and durability of the equipment is really, we stand tall behind it with industry-leading warranties. But to Matt's point, I mean, these systems are sophisticated. I mean, there's motherboards and semiconductors, and I mean, the amount of technology in these systems, it's still mechanical engineering and a mechanical product, but you really are seeing that shift of, we've talked about predictive diagnostics and remote monitoring things to help the technician and the human element be successful. But without proper maintenance, I mean, to Matt's point, or actually, Mike, to your point, you could neglect the system and get 20 years out of it. You're kind of rolling the dice there. But this is really the sweet spot of Daikin and Goodman's acquisition of Motili, not just a technology and procurement platform, but really a strong services platform. What does a maintenance plan look like? Let's protect the asset. So a lot of systems in the market are operating. Are they operating at full efficiency? Are they operating optimally? Probably not, right? So to get the most out of it, just like anything else, we take our car in not to just get the oil changed anymore, but they hook up a couple connectors and they check 99 points of, electronic sensors and everything else. And HVAC isn't much different, right? And in different climate conditions or circumstances or whatnot, it may be more or less important. But for us, it's if you're committing to more energy efficiency and sustainability and comfort, et cetera, put together a sound and cost-effective plan, right? A sensible plan to not only protect the asset, but really get the most out of the experience for the occupants, and really your investment overall.
And maybe we can end cap here, and then when we end cap, I'll let you guys tell everybody where they can reach out to you to learn more, or ask questions. Matt, I seem to recall, and again, I might be telling myself a story here, but part of Motili's labor design, I kind of liken it, the way I heard it was the Uberization of labor, right?
Yep.
And so you have this sort of, you curated these HVAC technicians all across the country.
Yep.
And let's just stick with this sort of self-diagnosing appliance that says, hey, I'm sick, I have a problem. The problem is X. Your system alerts the technician, tells them what the problem is. It's also so sophisticated that it knows who the best technician is for that particular problem. And it knows exactly where that technician is in Atlanta. And it knows how long it actually is going to take that technician to get from job they're on to job they need to go to based on this appliance telling them something's wrong with it. That's the story I told myself. Is that reality?
That's accurate. And then I'd add to that, Mike, that technician then goes to the job site with work order instructions through our mobile app. And they say, oh, I need to check in with the building manager and I'm going on a repair or a replacement call. They do a diagnostic if it's needed. Let's say they need a system. While they're standing in that apartment or that unit, they can type in, I need these 5 pieces or this component into our app. It will allow them to pick the distribution that's closest to them. They can go drive to the distribution center within a couple miles, generally in a place like Atlanta. That order has been EDI transmitted. They can pick the order right onto the truck when they show up. They drive back to the job site. They finish the job. Most of our stuff's done within a day. So I'll just do the last mile through that big network where we started, right? The sophistication doesn't start and stop at the contractor or the mobile app. It goes all the way through the experience for that consumer of, you know what, we're going to also get that equipment to that contractor as efficiently as possible and get them back to get that unit up and running as fast as possible. So it goes full circle.
Mind blowing. It's just mind blowing. I imagine at some point, the technician's truck is going to be a smart truck, and it's not only is it going to identify the technician, it's going to identify that technician actually has the right parts so you don't even have to do that last mile anymore.
Let's just say there's some things we're doing there. But what I will tell you is that there is a world of these ghost technicians, like ghost kitchens of the Uber Eats, right, where they create their own. Yeah. They create their own takeout restaurants. A lot of our best contractors don't need social media sites. They don't need websites. They don't need to do marketing. They just need to worry about being great HVAC technicians, and they need to have our app, and we can send them all the work they can handle. And they do a great job for us. And we see that in a number of metro areas where we have that much volume.
That is just,
it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
Well, let's in here. I want to respect each of your time and sort of end cap this with where can people learn more about each of you individually, and then certainly the services that you provide out into the marketplace.
Jason, you want to start?
Yeah. So for Daikan Comfort Technologies, I mean, DaikanComfort.com, that would be our market-facing, consumer-facing website. But as you mentioned, Mike, a lot of those subscribing to this podcast in the industry, um, I mean, it would be just contact us directly, right? Where I mean, you can find me on LinkedIn, or I can, obviously you have my contact information. But if it's a focus, like I said, myself, multi-dwelling, multifamily, reach out. Let's talk about it. I mean, we're certainly not going to cover everything in an hour, let alone not having visual aids and demonstration tools and a lot of to back up what we're talking about. But with this landscape and everything going on, it's never a one and done conversation, right? The more questions, the better for us. We want to break it down and understand, who we're talking to and really what their situation is. Because for us, it's not about products as much as it's about solutions. And Matthew just beautifully illustrated the supply chain aggregation, services side, all Motili strengths. And then we've said many times over, innovative and industry leading HVAC solutions, right? Equipment, products. But every decision maker, developer, owner, operator, whatever situation is different. So please reach out. Let's have a conversation. And we'd love to talk about it.
Jason's your guy. I can't say it better than that. You can find me on LinkedIn, but I'd say for this, multifamily audience, Jason there alongside the Daikan Comfort and Motili websites will take good care of it.
Awesome. Matthew, Jason, it has been an absolute mind-blowing pleasure to speak to the two of you. I mean that. It's awesome. I can't wait to get this episode out into the ecosystem, and take care, both of you. If I'm ever in Oregon, I'm definitely stopping by, Jason. Sorry.
Please do. I will personally drive you to El Burro. I'll give an El Burro Loco plug here at the end. We will go up and have some wild boar tacos, you and me. I would love a reason to get back to Welch's.
Done. All right. Excellent. Thanks, you two.
Thank you so much, Mike. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Likewise. Thanks, Mike.
Yep. For everyone else, we'll see you next time on Collective Conversations.